Welcome to Inside Late Night with Mark Malkoff, presented by LateNighter.com. Joining us today, longtime Conan writer Andy Blitz, responsible for some of my favorite Conan pieces. Now it's time to go inside Late Night. Andy Blitz, it's good to see you.
You too.
It's been a while. The last time I hung out with you, I saw you was off to the side at the Colbert Report. I think you were visiting Laura Kraft. I had a day job there, and once in a while you'd come over and say hi.
Oh, yeah. Laura Kraft. I see her from time to time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were at Conan during my favorite time. I talked to Robert Smigel and I told him my favorite Conan, I feel like when the writing was the strongest was during the Smigel years and during when Jonathan Groff was there. And I mean, not to take away from like other people like Mike Sweeney, but in terms of the writing quality when Groff was there, it was so strong. Your pieces, people still talk about that, but Jonathan Groff was the one that hired you, right?
I was hired, yes, by Groff, but I feel compelled, since your broadside, your ambush of Sweeney, I feel compelled to defend that he's basically the funniest person I've ever met. And he was like, Sweeney was on the writing staff under both those head writers, and he is hilarious.
He is.
Most of my tenure at Conan was under Sweeney. There is a thing when you become head writer, you're sort of you're like promoted out of writing to some extent. You have more like management and supervision.
They brought Mike Sweeney in when Joel Goddard had been doing the warm up and it hadn't been going well. Joel, even I've talked to him about it. Joel told me I wasn't good at it, and Joel was not getting anything. It wasn't going well. So they brought Mike in before they hired him as a writer, and he was the warm up guy, and he was fantastic warm up, and was great when Conan would come out and sing "Hunk Up Burnin' Love," the Elvis Presley song, and
oh yeah.
Yeah, and then Mike was hired as a writer, and very very funny man, very funny man.
Yes, as are Smigel and Groff, obviously, and Smigel just did it. Was just there for, I don't know, a year and a half or something when the show started, and then a brief tenure, a few months by the late Marsh McCall. And then Groff, I think, became the head writer in '95, I want to say. And then he hired me and then fled. It was his way. It's like, someone that like plants a bomb and then just like gets the fuck out of there.
Well, I wanted to ask about your a lot of your Conan bits people still talk about, but in terms of the remotes, some of them are so over the top. I wanted to ask about, before we get to some of the ones that got on there, were there any that you tried to do or pitch that didn't make it? Because you went to India, you went to Toronto, you have Conan, and with the realtor going to the trying to get an apartment. But did you pitch anything that was just too much for them to say yes to?
As a remote,
Sure.
I'll tell you about a couple of remotes that I know that I pitched or started that didn't go. But there wasn't anything I think that was like too much that comes to mind. Well, there was one. There was like I'm just gonna I'll just like I said, it pops in my head. There was one thing that was there was some dating show that contacted us, contacted the show, and they wanted to do like have a comedy writer on there. And I thought that, and then immediately, I don't know. Everyone's just like, let's just put Andy Blitz to be like a total weirdo on. So I don't even remember what show it was. And it was about to like go forward. And I just had sort of like a pang of guilt, which is stupid, I think, looking back. Nathan Fielder wouldn't have had guilt. But I said, like, let them know that we're just doing this as like, we're just going to be ridiculous. Because I felt bad for the women that might actually be looking for a relationship. Who knows? Maybe it would have been a love connection. But I was just like, let them know we're just doing this for the comedy. And then the show canceled. They're like, I don't know. I don't know why. They should have done it. So that was one that didn't happen. Another one, um, well, this is the big one, and it's not that it's not quite that it was too far. Um, the show was nominated for an Emmy, and the idea was uh, Conan was getting me ready for the Emmys. So he went. I got fitted for a tux, and I think I got like a pedicure somehow. That when I was doing all that. Um, and then we shot some footage, but I was just like, this is not enough. So we were going to shoot more on a second day. Um, so we shot the one day we got some footage and we were going to shoot, and I was like, this is when we really have to nail it today if this remote's going to work. So I was going to go in early, like, and we usually started late in the day, and I was going to go in early to sort of watch the footage we had and see if we could turn it into something. And when I got to the office, I walked to the office and I noticed like a weird energy. There was like past like people having like a fire drill or something. And I was like lost thinking about the remote. What are Conan and I going to do? And I was like, what the hell is this? Like another building had a fire drill? Like, what the fuck is going on? So that was 9/11.
Oh man.
So, bad for many reasons, but it also killed that remote. Um, and so that was that. We just never really finished it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you for some of these remotes, was that your idea to pitch when you went to India? Was that to NBC's IT person?
Yeah, that was a real problem. That I was really having a problem with pop-ups on my laptop. No, not laptop, on whatever, my desktop actually. And so I was like trying to call them. And then, yeah, it was just kind of thrown out as a joke. Like, I think, like, should I go there? And then it was like, well, should I? Like, why not? You know, would NBC pay for that? And they wouldn't today, but in that era, they were just, I don't know, people made bad decisions.
It's true. They took away dinner eventually, but back then you guys were all getting the writers were all being fed dinner. They would buy
Yeah.
in individual dinners rather, and things. Yeah, the money
Oh, yeah.
changed. But when you went to India, do you have other writers that are with you that are preparing jokes that are off camera, throwing you alt lines, or is it just all you?
Yes. So, for that one, there was another writer whose name is Dan Gore, uh, Goor. He went on to create Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Brooklyn Double Nine. Um, Dan Gore, yeah, he came along with me to that. He had been to India, I think, before. His wife, his like in-laws are from India, so I think he had accompanied his wife on trips there in the past. I think certainly his wife had gone, and then so he came along. Dan came along for that trip, as well as there was a couple producers there that came to, and I think one of them's sole role was to keep us from spending too much money. But the exchange rate, it was so cheap in India that like there's no way he paid for himself. You know, he got like I think probably was flown out first class and got a nice hotel, and definitely was a net loss for the company.
How much footage do you have for something like that normally that you have to cut down to like a 4 minute 5 minute remote?
I don't know. I mean, I definitely think that we wanted to get as much as we could. I mean, just broadly speaking, and then just sort of have stuff to choose from. Um, and so actually, okay, now you're reminding me. This was a Dan Gore pitch. Was we were there and we were uh, I remember I specifically scheduled it like it was a work week, but it was the week before the Olympics were happening because the show was going to be dark for 2 weeks while the Olympics were on. So basically, it was a 3 week window, and I did that so I could just travel around India in addition to doing that remote. And my girlfriend at the time came, and we. Um, so the point of that is that I think we, at some point, we weren't necessarily able to communicate with anyone at the show. So we were shooting footage, and I knew we wanted to meet Sharon, who was the person who was helping me at this help desk in Hyderabad, India. But Dan Gore pitched, while we're here, what if we also try to shoot a thing of you trying to become like a Bollywood star? And so we just kind of were grabbing footage for a possible second remote, which we didn't really have, but then we ended up using that as the ending of that piece, which is me trying to like do a Bollywood dance that they taught me to do. Um, yeah, but we just shot a lot. We shot a lot of stuff that we didn't use. Like, so I think I was like getting direction from a scene. I was meeting like a Bollywood director and actors on an actual film shoot, and then I was going to try to be in it. But we were winging a lot of it. And then, oh yeah, Dan Gore reminded me of the story that we met some producer of a Bollywood film, and we were shooting this thing, and he came up with the idea that he was going to be on a phone call when I walked into his office, and he was just going to tell me, "Just wait a second, I'm too busy." And then I decided, knowing that, like, I'm like, why? Like, and he's just like, let's just, I don't know. It was just his idea. So I decided when I walked in, I would also be on a phone call. So I was having like a fake phone call. So we were both on our phone calls. And then he just did this and then got off his call. And he's like, yes. And then I pretended I was still on my call. And it was just like, it went on way too long. And so that kind of decision making led to a lot of excess footage, basically. I don't know a number, but yeah, more than we need.
One of the bravest things that you and the Conan writers, a couple of your friends writers, and I wanted to just I want to know about your anxiety level for this. Is when you did Slipknots, when you were backstage about to open up at a Slipknot concert, and you're going to be going in front of all these people that have spent lots of money and resources and time to be there, and they basically announce that they've an opening act, which they don't know what's going on, and you're going to be going in front of all these people. Is there anxiety? Is excitement? What is going through your head? What are your expectations, and how did everything go?
Yeah, I my only anxiety. I mean, looking back, it's probably foolish, but my only anxiety is like, is this going to work comedically? But they told the stage manager told us like, be careful out there. These guys throw batteries at bands that they like. That was a real quote. So we're like, oh, okay. Um, and yeah, so I don't know how. There was also, I guess it's okay to say, there was a weird thing where John Glazer kept getting hit in the head, not at that show, at other things on the show. Like he was trying to do some other sketch and then he walked out and the door closed and hit him in the head. Another time he like fell his head. So according to that, I love Glazer. I didn't want anything to happen to him, but I'm like, if somebody throws something, I bet I'll just hit Glazer. That's what his luck is. I didn't want that, but I was like, I think I'm safe. But yeah, no, it was. I didn't know what would happen. I don't think any of us knew what would happen. Um, and I wanted to like, we turned the lights down, but like Slipknot actually like, yeah, they have like a full montage. Like they have a specific song they play before they come out, and like I wanted to like commit as much as possible to like get that audience to think they're about to fucking see Slipknot, who they were there to see, and then it's us, it's the Slipknots. And I'm like, if we get attacked, like that's better for the comedy. So I wasn't that anxious about being physically attacked because I knew it'd be funny if we survived.
How long were you actually on stage? And just to set this up, it was this act. You came up with this idea for this fictional band that it just had a name, Slip Nuts, not Slipknot, that just would slip on nuts, and that was kind of like the whole thing. But how long were you out on stage in front of these people that had no idea what was going on? This crowd.
Well, we just sang the song and then we said thank you and acted like it was a huge triumph, and then we left. And then didn't think of it before, but once we were off, I was like, oh, like what if we just go back as do an encore? Um, and then do the same song again. But I think it was too late at that point, unfortunately.
I love when they would take some of the things you would come up with, and they would just take it to the maximum level. Like when you had this, it was an Act 5 character, which they did a bunch of times, which was the guy that had a very long cheer. You would have that sports chant, and,
Right,
Conan would set that up, and you would just usually a chant would maybe last like 5 seconds, but your thing would go on and on, these tangents, and you went to a Devils game, you took a
right.
camera
Oh
crew, and
yeah.
you're trying to teach the fans, the hardcore fans, this chant that was like, I don't know, a minute or 2, and it just keeps going and going.
I never thought about it until you just mention it right now. But that was the same venue as the Slipknot thing.
Oh, yeah.
Same arena where the Devils played. Yeah, that was the Stanley Cup Finals. So once again, like people didn't have any interest in seeing me. Um, they're fucking they've been watching the Devils all year, and they're waiting to win the Stanley Cup, and then yeah, you just kind of do it and figure like hopefully you don't get assaulted, and if you do, hopefully it's not too bad and it's funny. But it was all right.
Did you have any public figures, to your knowledge, that were upset at jokes that you did? I remember Michael Bolton was upset at Conan for something. I forget why. I think he mentioned it on the show that Bolton wasn't thrilled with him. But were you, when you were there? Did you get any feedback from public figures that weren't happy with bits or anything?
There were definitely people who would like call and complain, maybe with justification. Um, I don't quite remember. I know Slipknot was fine with the Slipknots. They were cool about it. I mean, it wasn't, it was making fun of us, not that. It was just sort of, um, I can't quite remember anyone that,
There were certain guests that were so into doing comedy bits, and then there were others that just wouldn't do it. And I had heard the story from writers that it was Andy Griffith that they were trying to get him to do a bit, and he's like, I'm going to say no to this, and they kept trying, and finally he just was like kind of snapped a little bit. But
oh, yes, I do. I've heard that story as well. Um, and I know Smigel tried to pitch Neil Young. I also pitched Neil Young to sing the Slipknot song.
what did he say?
Well, he said no, but he was yeah, he looked at me and then it was weird. He started naming nuts, other nuts, and I thought there's a thing in Best in Show that always cracked me up where Christopher Guest is just naming kinds of nuts, and then but I don't think it didn't feel like Neil Young was referencing that. He just sort of like it just triggered something in his brain, which is just like what are other kinds of nuts.
In his defense, he absolutely did other bits within the show. He did a thing, I think, where he was maybe did Joel Goddard's voice. He did a couple different, things, so he was a good sport. But when you play Vin Diesel's brother, you're working with Vin Diesel, do you have to go to the green room before the show, or do you get on the phone with his publicist and explain that you this bit to Vin Diesel, who's a huge movie star at the time? How did that happen?
That would have been through our talent department. Um, And again, like to Vin Diesel's credit, like he was cool about it. I think he agreed to do it and didn't quite know what it was, which to me is like really kind of cool. Um, so we did it, yeah, and then he stayed out there. I wanted to do a thing where I kind of come out next to him and we're brothers and we have a hug and we just kind of talk about a little bit about our childhood briefly, and then we just kind of show the clip of me as his brother. But then the next time he was on the show, he didn't do it. So I still show the clip. Um, I don't know. Maybe that was just a comedy thing. Like, don't go back to that well too much.
It's really funny. Why was it necessary to have 12-hour days for the writers? Because you have the monologue people that get to leave early. The Letterman thing as well, because there's so little writing, because the monologue people get to leave early, which is fine. But the people that are doing a desk piece and then an act 5, there isn't that much comedy for that many writers for a 12-hour day. Yes, I know the writers are producing their own pieces, but looking back, do you think it was necessary for 12-hour days for a show that was 4 days a week?
Uh, Probably not. I mean, I think it got better, but it was so. I mean, I think if the hours got better, then you would say it wasn't necessary. But I do think that to some extent there was like um um I think because to some extent the show was topical, so it would be like what has happened today, you know what I mean? Like in that sense it was necessary that like if we wanted to reference something that happened, like at an awards show, we might all watch it together or something. Um Yeah, but we would tape the show at 5:30 and then afterward eat dinner. So we sometimes wouldn't start writing after that until whatever, 7:30 or something like that to start to write stuff for. But I don't know, it worked. I mean, the thing about Slipknots is like that we came up with that like at midnight or later the day before, So I'll revert. I'll change my answer. Yes, it was necessary. We should have been working longer. We should have all lived there.
Lorne Michaels' philosophy was that for comedy writers, when exhaustion is your friend and you come up with some of the most creative things. So I guess that's a testament.
Yeah,
Back then, Conan's show was pretty much like Letterman and Johnny Carson, which was live to tape. They almost never stopped tape. What were some disasters where they actually had to stop tape that you remember?
that's a good question. I'm sorry that I don't.
It's okay.
Nothing comes to mind. I mean, it was a thing. Like even when there were screw ups, we would just go through them. Somebody was reminding me. I was talking with Kevin Dorff recently, who worked on the show with us. Him and Glazer and I were all working together, and there was a thing where Kevin was going to do a voiceover or was recording a voiceover in the booth to be used later. I don't know why they were recording it then, and it was piped through to to the audience. So Conan was interviewing, I don't know, some normal serious actor, I think. I kind of asked, Dorf told me what it was, and then he's just like, "Now that's a Good Friday," and it just came over the speakers, and it was his voice from the booth, and it was like Conan, and not this, it was like Benicio del Toro or something like that. Or it was just like, what was that? No, James Spader, maybe James
Did he
Spader.
keep it in? Conan keep it in? Did he use that?
Yes,
Oh, good.
yes, I think it aired. So that was the kind of thing. So I don't remember a lot that was stopped. I do remember editing some Triumph piece. I didn't do a lot of Triumph stuff, but I was working on one, and then the editing machine, like we were editing while they were loading in the audience, and then the editing machine like crashed and had to be rebooted. So they just rolled in a totally different. They just reused a desk piece, um, some old footage, which was the only time I can remember that happening. But I can't remember them like stopping off the top of my head. Um, sure there's been something.
I think that that was always good. I mean, especially early on and stuff, if there were stuff didn't work, there was definitely a charm to that. You had standards and practices every show does. What were there some things that you tried to get in that they just wouldn't let you do that you tried to talk them into?
Can't remember. Someone else I think has talked about this. So but like it was just funny to have them like they would record a message and they would say the most foul things because they would just say like, you know, you can't say fucker motherfucker or whatever, because they were, so they would be like, and then I guess like 30 Rock maybe took something like that. And used that idea. I'm sure they encountered the same thing at SNL, and actually the same standards. Yeah, go ahead.
One person who was wonderful, who I was friendly with and got to have lunches with, was Rick Ludwin, who was vice president of entertainment late night. Who
Yeah,
traditionally a lot of creative people in TV look at an executive, a TV executive, and not have nice things to say. But everybody I've ever spoken with, maybe not Jim Downey, and Norm Macdonald was actually had good things to say for the most part. But for the most part, people at SNL and Conan loved him. He was such a wonderful guy, and Seinfeld never would have gotten on the air or stayed on the air if it
absolutely.
wasn't
Yeah,
for him. But can you talk about Rick a little?
yeah. I mean, it's like, I mean, Conan was my first TV job, so Rick Ludman was like the first um, executive that I ever worked with, and like just like this guy who was cared about comedy and was really smart, and he would like tell you in person when he liked stuff. I think maybe he emailed sometimes. I don't even know. And he was just this guy, and like he had really good taste in comedy. I mean, obviously, like he's to his credit, Seinfeld was known by all of us, and not like just some forgotten 4 episode experiment. And yeah, he would just say like, "I love this thing," and it would be a weird thing. It wouldn't be something that you would stereotypically think of an executive, being into. And so because that was my first experience, I was just like, I don't buy any of the, like what. And he was also just like a sweet guy. He was kind of like bookish, um, and I think he's from Ohio originally. And yeah, he was just like it would be like it would never be like bad to have the executive around. Like we can't do anything. Like he was he was cool with anything as long as like it wouldn't get in trouble with the advertisers or whatever. Then maybe, but that wouldn't even be it wouldn't even be coming from him. Like we can't do that usually, or I wouldn't really hear that. Yeah, he was a great guy, and just like this guy who had really good taste in comedy. I mean, part of it was also like NBC was, we were on so late and we had to turn out a show every night, and we were 3,000 miles away or whatever from LA. So I think they were just like, whatever, as long as we don't get in massive trouble, that's fine.
There has never been a late night show that I'm aware of that had so many interns that turned out to be famous. John Krasinski, Mindy Kaling, Vanessa Bayer, who was on Saturday Night Live. Do you remember when any of these individuals were interns?
Yeah. I was just telling the story yesterday. I remember John Krasinski, just like distributing scripts. I mean, actually, like his character in The Office is probably not that different from the way I knew him. So that sort of helps with the transition of when he ended up being a successful lead on the TV show. Yeah, he was just like he would make copies and distribute scripts. And I remember like chatting with him and him, saying he was interested in, whatever show business, like, writing, acting and all that. And I definitely like, he was a good, nice guy. And um, yeah, I mean, I'm sure I was just like, okay, good luck, thinking like you've chosen a miserable path in life. I mean, as a lot of us have, but
I met him that summer at Union Square. I was doing a comedy show, handing out postcards, and he was a Conan intern. I'll never forget. He was sitting on the steps at Union Square with this thick book, and he's like, "Yeah, I wanna do comedy as well." I'm like, "Yeah, good luck," you know, and I'm just like, "I'm never
Yeah,
gonna see." And I would get people would give me their emails to be on the email list, and I he was at Hotmail at the time, and I just and then he got and then he got, I was like, "Wait a minute, it's the guy from The Office." I met him, and yeah, it's amazing. You never know.
yeah, and then a couple of them, like most of The Office, right? I think like Mindy
Yeah,
Kaling, Ellie Kemper,
that's
Angela
amazing.
Angela
Yes,
Kinsey, I think.
she
Yeah,
was, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, she was also an intern at Conan. Yeah, and I forgot about that. It's amazing to to look back, um, at all of that. When did Conan you did stand up on Conan how many times? Was it twice or 3 times? And what was that like?
Maybe no, I think it was like 4 times or something like that. That was fun. I mean, it was just sort of like uh, I was on the show. I was hired on the show before I had booked stand up. So, but in a way that made it like more nerve wracking in a different way because um, ordinarily you're going to go out there and like, okay, all your friends and family are going to see this. I hope it goes well. But now, like all my coworkers are going to, or you might think, oh, my coworkers are going to see this, and I'm going to see them 5 minutes after I finish or less. So it better go well. Um, so yeah, it was like I was nervous. I mean, it was weirdly like I don't know what the hundreds of thousands or something like that was probably the audience. But psychologically, it wasn't that different probably from anyone who invites their coworkers, like, "Hey, I'm doing a stand-up night. Come see me." I mean, because that's what I felt like I was just doing it in front of my coworkers.
Were you going out at nights then? Would it be, Frank Smiley or whoever was t in running sets leading up to those stand-up appearances? Because you were playing Luna Lounge and you're doing kind of, not traditional comedy clubs, correct?
Yeah, right. I would develop that material at like all. I mean, I would also do like the comic strip, or I would do clubs too, Gotham. But like, I was really like my favorite places to play were like the Luna Lounge, um, Waiter, Rafifi, alt rooms where it'd be stand up, but you could just like be weirder, or you know, you didn't have to follow. Like in the clubs, I just felt like the audience had a real expectation for what the voice and attitude of stand up is in a more conventional, confined way. And so and I'm not that, you really. So sometimes you get an audience that's like open to like, okay, this is a different thing, and but they'll get it, and it'll be other times they're just like,
That's what got you hired at Conan because you were at Luna Lounge and you met Tommy Blacha and was it Brian McCann? I mean, Jonathan Groff would hang out there as well and do, comedy, but this was this
yeah,
place. It was like $5 to get in. It was all these people that were not famous at the time that now are huge stars. And, was
right.
that it was so many people were trying to get Jeff Singer, Naomi Steinberg, they were, trying to get stage time. Was that hard for you? Did you have to give them a videotape, or how did you get booked there? And how did that impact you?
I mean, I did not. Yeah, I don't know, somewhere they saw me somewhere else just by chance, and then invited me to do it.
Yeah, it was a big deal. It was a huge deal. Industry was there, and it was this.
I always wanted to do Luna. I would go regularly and see, and the comics that I liked were performing there, and then they just happened to see me, and then invite me to perform there. Yeah.
And then you only had to do 1 packet for Conan, correct? Because why and when did it change that people had to do 3 packets and it would take them over a year to get hired? I've talked to, people you're looking like that's wrong, and perhaps it is, but there were people there that had to submit so many times, it got to be at least, like, 3 times over a year period. Maybe that was not your experience, I'm guessing it wasn't, but do I have that wrong?
I'm not familiar with that, but I'm wondering if that's like would they submit and then they were like maybe their packet was liked, but they hired somebody else, and so the next time a job opened up, they felt like they had to.
It could have been. There were a bunch of people that submitted numerous times to the show, but you only had to do 1 packet, right? And you got hired?
I got hired off of my first packet, which
What was in your packet, if you remember any of the ideas, and did any of them actually get on air?
I'm almost sure I don't remember a lot of it. I remember one thing. I don't think anything from it ended up on the air. I wrote one thing where Conan was saying that like he was very excited about his next guest. It's somebody who he always dreamed of wanting to interview, but just never really thought that it would be possible because he always assumed that he had died over 100 years ago. But it turns out that he had faked his death, and for whatever reasons, we'll talk to him about it. Um, and please welcome Abraham Lincoln. So Lincoln would come out 190 years old or something like that, longer than we'd known, and he would come out, very frail, of course, um, and he'd be in good spirits. Loves the Max Weinberg Seven and all that, joking around and explain to Conan, that he didn't get injured ultimately in that assassination attempt, and it was just a way to he was just needed a break from the spotlight or whatever. And then someone was going to charge onto the set screaming that Andy Richter had screwed them over about something I can't remember, and pulled the gun and tried to shoot Andy, and then just wiped out and misfired and hit Lincoln and killed Lincoln.
The irony. It got you hired.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you did that remote with Conan where you were looking for an apartment with a realtor, is that one of those things that I'm guessing you come up with a bunch of different beats. One is you're gonna take a shower. Do you bring swim trunks? Like, is it like, do you tell the real estate person in advance that that's gonna happen? Or how much was spontaneous versus, things that you had on a beat sheet?
I think a lot was spontaneous. We didn't tell the realtor anything. And we didn't really know much. I think we maybe knew uh, that I would take a shower. Um, but I think that's kind of it. We just kind of, I think probably like Jason Chalemi had met the realtor, found her for us, and we just kind of met her on the street, and we were just went and did it, um, and just kind of ad libbed it.
It was very funny.
Yeah. Um, And then, yeah, I feel like uh, Kevin Dorff was there, and maybe like he pitched um, the hard cut from. There was a really expensive one, but like, yeah, I mean, it was improvised basically, and then even the like, I took a shower. I think that was probably we thought of doing that, and then just sort of called a delivery guy and yeah, just improvised also. Like, let's just get him in the shower, and he did. But that was not planned. Yeah,
You just throw them $50 cash, petty cash, and I'm guessing that they're
yeah,
you
yeah,
get to be on television.
yeah.
What was it like, writing for Jason Kelsey's late night show?
Yeah, that was so. Just did that, and I mean, the fun thing about that is these are the. It was 4 writers, and we had just like um, uh, it was three of us we're all worked together at Conan back in this time. It was me, Kevin Dorff, and John Glazer was the head writer, and then Tammy Sager, who's also hilarious,
Yeah, she's
and
funny.
and just
Improv Chicago person in 30 Rock.
yeah,
Yeah.
she's incredible. So um, and as our Glazer and Dorff, so it was just like a great team, and we just sort of like it just kind of like fell into my lap, and I think Glazer got hired, and then brought us on, and uh, I've sort of I'm a sports fan, and I have been only in the last 2 years of doing fantasy football, so I was kind of ready. I had sort of accidentally done the research to work on it, but it felt a little bit like um, doing stuff in the old Conan days, in that we would like. So we did like 5 episodes. It just ran during the NFL playoffs, and we did a thing where um, it was a lot like kind of like we were winging it. So like in the second episode, Jason Kelsey's great. He's like a very sweet guy, um, and just kind of naturally funny and charismatic. Um, and so it was really fun. And then like his wife Kylie was going to be announcing it, and then she got sick the second week, and then he just brought in this old teammate of his who has long blonde hair like his wife. But anyway, we just kind of like were figuring stuff out like in 2 hours before we taped. So it felt like the energy and the kind of winging it spirit sort of that we um, had counted.
It's fun that you got to do that. One thing I wanted to ask you about Conan is, what was that like? Do you remember any specifics when he would go around with his guitar and just kind of roast employees? He would just kind of show up and do these songs, correct?
Yeah. Um,
I wish they were videotaped. I mean, he kind of did that a little bit on his tour with when he was with who was it? I forget. He was with somebody and he was kind of yeah, somebody, but yeah, it was pretty funny.
he would like uh, what was I going to say? I think maybe some of it has been released. Some Team Coco stuff, rehearsals and stuff
Yeah.
have been released where he's just kind of strumming his guitar and just talking trash, and it's
Jack McBrayer, that's who it was on tour. He was doing that with McBrayer. It was
oh yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
funny.
yeah. So it'd be some of that. Um, but then I think Michael Coman reminded me of this, the way it would go, which is that I think I'll get it wrong. He would do this like, do you know about this Casey at the Bat sort of poem? And he would like have a baseball cap, and he would just be like, "My name, good sir, is Cappy Cap." He would do like a poem. Uh, I with glove in hand, and I wield the bat. And it'd just be this incredibly stupid poem. I can't remember how it goes, and it would end with that name again is Cappy Cap, and it was just like it was so insanely dumb, but it would just like make us all laugh to tears. I mean, that was. I mean, you ask about like the late hours. Like, I didn't feel it because it was really fun. It was just hanging out with a bunch of hilarious people.
Yeah,
Um, and yeah, I don't remember much specifics, unfortunately. Yeah, he would just come into the office. I was sharing an office with Andrew Weinberg at one point, and Conan would just come in and improvise a song about how whatever we were writing would inevitably disappoint him and stuff like that. Yeah, it was
that's
fun.
funny. I would see you over the Saturday Night Live after parties sometimes. Did you go a lot to those?
Yeah, I guess I would. I would go. I guess for a couple years, my friends Leo Allen and Eric Slovin were writing on the show.
They're hilarious. They wrote a really funny, sketch. It was the Scott Joplin Time Traveler. Let's bring John on. John is with the Saturday Night Network. If he's paying attention, let's see if he's actually paying attention. Our producer, from the Saturday Night Network, but I believe that would have been Brittany Murphy. Was she playing Anna Kournikova?
I think you got that right.
And I think that they wrote that. I don't know if you remember
Right.
that, piece, but that was Slovin and Allen.
They did it a couple times. It was called Tennis Talk.
Oh, it was so funny, and I
Oh
think that
yeah.
they wrote that. What else, John, do you know what else they wrote over there? They didn't I don't know if they got a lot. I think they did The Falconer maybe with Forte?
They did a lot of stuff with Forte.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't think they got on as much as matches their funniness. I've worked with a Leo on a number of shows since, but we were all really good friends from the Luna Lounge comedy scene.
So you'd go over and hang out with them at the show, yeah.
Yeah, and I think I told Eric reminds me that I said this about the SNL after parties that they would have the after party that started at like 1:30 in the morning, and then they would have the after party that started at like 4:30 or something, and basically go till dawn, till the sun came up. And
You would need a password to get into the after party.
probably right, yeah. But I would never. I would tell. At some point, I stopped going to those because I was talking with Eric, and I was like, I have never been glad that I went. I was like, I've never not regretted, like, just exhausted the
Oh,
next
because 'cause
day.
you're
And
so
like,
tired. The after was freaking brutal.
Just to close the loop on the Alan Slovin thing, they wrote that sketch with Matt Damon in 2002 where everyone was named Matt Damon. Like there was a Dr. Matt Damon and all of that with Parnell.
They were
that sounds
so
right.
damn funny. I remember Slovin and Allen doing that on stage at UCB, that whole, what was it, from Deliverance, that the famous song from Deliverance, and they would go, it was like a duet, like back and forth. It was like a duel. It wasn't because they would do dueling banjos in Deliverance, and this was with the it was with the music, but they would do different techniques back and forth to get that played. Their stuff was so damn funny. And I
Yeah.
think that's how they got hired. I mean, there aren't a lot of comedy teams anymore, and they got hired off of their performance.
Leo was in some monologue at SNL. He was like an audience plant. And it was the first time, like, because of Conan, we were live, to tape, but we were taped. But like, it was live, and this was sort of like one of the moments in my life where I was just like, oh man, I can call him right now, and I think I might be able to make my TV ring if he forgot to turn off his phone. And it is like, I do understand people that have this like destructive vandalism. Well, I don't condone it, and I'm like, I get the impulse.
I think it was the Ray Liotta episode that you're thinking of.
Oh, maybe yes, that sounds right. It's just like I can call him and I can make my TV ring. It'll be amazing. And I had to fight hard not to because I'm like, well, then he'll get in trouble. And I told him that story, and he's like, yeah, I'm so paranoid. I checked like every 5 seconds that my phone was off.
Do you remember being at the after party? I'm pretty sure you were there. It was when Conan hosted SNL, and it was a big deal. And I remember Gary Shandling being at the party and being so starstruck, that he was there. And he was talking to a cast member and I just left Shandling alone that time. I got to meet him before, but I remember Max was there. Max Weinberg was in the monologue. They had Conan goes down to 6A, and Max is on the desk with a female. And remember Max
I
being there.
remember that. I don't remember meeting Shambling there. I don't know if I should share the story. It's not that big. It's not that scandalous.
Please.
But I mentioned, I was dating Marie at the time, and the show was nominated for an Emmy, and it was her idea. She's like, the Emmys are boring when you're there, and you guys never win. So what if instead of going, we hire lookalikes to go? So we did that. I hired somebody who looked like me and made him look more like me, and he brought his wife, and she actually had like I don't know, was she Polish or Russian or Ukrainian? She had like an accent, but she wore like a red wig to look like Maria. And I made them memorize photos of all our friends from the show who would be there and what conversations to like continue with them. Some of them were too private to just share with total strangers. So they showed up at the Emmys and just pretended to be us, and we just hung out. And the reason I tell the story is that the the year before that, I don't know, is that Gary Shandling had sort of tried to hit on Maria at the Emmys. So then now a different woman in the red wig is like, "Hello again, Gary. Do you remember?" I don't know why we had briefed her on that. If you see Gary Shandling, and yeah,
And none of the other writers knew that you were gonna do this, that you were gonna cast people that look like you to show
no,
up?
no, no.
And what was the reaction later? Did you find out?
I think it was enjoyed, but I mean, some of the writers were married to other comedy people, like so they were like enjoyed it. Other ones were married to civilians who were just kind of like got frustrated. Yeah.
It's like that one SNL writer that I wanna talk to that was a Groundlings guy, friends with Farrell, and he would on the Monday pitch, he would dress up like different was it Stephen Clegg? Is that his name? I don't remember if I'm getting that right, but he would dress up, I think, like Mark Twain or different just to these really Andy Kaufman type pieces. I think he brought a child in once that wasn't maybe I don't know if it was his
I'm sure Lauren loved
pitch,
that.
Lorne, and just do all these yeah, odd things, but, yeah, I love that you did that. I wish that would have been videotaped, but, I'm sure a photo exists, but,
Yes, it's on my Instagram up there. And yeah, but that was it. I didn't really get to meet Gary Shandling much other than that, but I heard he was a lovely guy. I don't know.
yeah, who was somebody that you went backstage that you really wanted to meet, that you were excited to? I mean, everybody was on that show. I mean, in the beginning, when I was going to Conan, when I met Robert when I was, I guess, 17, I mean, they had empty seats and they couldn't fill the 197 seats, and it was always like Ellen Cleghorn would be the first guest or, like Adam West, who's great. I mean, and Ellen's great as well, but, it would be hard to get guests, but then, after a couple years, it was like Scorsese and Hanks and, like, I mean, it was just the
Am I wrong that the late George Wendt, who just passed away, I think he did a walk on the first
Yes,
ever Conan show,
he
right?
did. He leg wrestled Andy, and that yeah, he was, he knew Robert from
Yeah,
Superfans, so,
right.
yeah.
Um, uh, well, the thing about it is that like the one person that we were all sort of excited to see, and I didn't get to meet him unfortunately, but like Gene Wilder is the only like you get used to you'd see like Julia Roberts, Gwyneth Paltrow all the time, and you just kind of get numb to it. It's just like this. You're like, oh, there's like a stunningly beautiful person, but you're just kind of like it became very like who cares, like you see them every day, they're just sort of like people in your high school almost. But Gene Wilder was someone that we all so many of us kind of like idolized his stuff, and producers Young Frankenstein. So I remember when he was on the show, like a bunch of us made a point of going down and just to kind of like get a glimpse of Gene Wilder. um
I think he wore a sweatshirt, that's what I remember, I could be off on that, but he wore, like, a blue sweatshirt, but he was I remember when he was on 'cause he told Conan, he's like, "You were very good at what you do," he said something like that, and, very
there's
complimentary.
a Gene Wilder documentary or something, and I think they show a clip from his interview with Conan.
It was wonderful. No, I love Gene Wilder. I yeah, he's, unbelievable. Couldn't get away from Wonka. Everywhere he went, that was, like, his one thing he had just couldn't it was hard for him. Um,
He couldn't what like he was.
all I know is I've talked to several people. My brother was a PA on Will and Grace, and Gene Wilder was his last acting, I believe, credit on camera. And during the and in between scenes or whatever, the whoever did it, they would have a DJ play music. They played the Wonka theme and or Pure Imagination, Anthony Newley, and and everybody starts cheering in the audience, and Gene Wilder just under his breath is like, I can't get away from that. I can't get away.
It's so funny. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. It's if you look at the box office for that movie compared to like the box office for Timothy Chalamet, which is like, I don't even have any. I like that movie came. I mean, this is sort of more to do with my not being in touch, but like I'm like, oh, there was a Willy Wonka movie with Timothy Chalamet as Willy Wonka, and the box office it's like $1 billion or whatever. I mean, it's insane. And compare it to it feels like nobody saw that Gene Wilder one in the theaters. I mean,
that's exactly right. It was considered it was not considered a success. Just like Strange Brew. I was talking to Pam Thomas, who was worked on it, and I always think of Strange Brew. Everyone's seen it. It must have been a big success, but it was a box office bomb.
amazing.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? I remember when Big Lebowski came out, and I remember one person named Chris Hildrew, who I was friends in Hershey, Pennsylvania, was like, "You have to see this movie. This movie's amazing." And no one talked about it for years. And I had heard the critics did okay, but it was
Oh,
like one of
wow.
those things. And then it just took a while. But I don't know anyone else that saw that in the theater. But
Right.
it became something. You just never know, I guess.
That gives me hope from some of my pieces that I feel are.
Yes, Andy Blitz. I'm so glad we got to do this. Thanks for doing this, and I'm glad that John got to join us. John Schneider from the Saturday Night Network. You should check out John. He has everybody. So many people he's interviewed from Saturday Night Live, and they do stats on the seasons and stuff. So you should definitely check out the Saturday Night Network. So I'm glad we got to do this. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks so much, man.
Thank you to Andy Blitz. Be sure to check out, if you live on the West Coast in Los Angeles, Andy Blitz and Friends. That is Friday, June 13th at 7:30 at the Silverlake Lyric Hyperion. Andy Blitz and Friends. It's going to be a lot of fun. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts so you never miss an episode. Please leave a review. Also, be sure to check out latenighter.com for all of your late night news, past and present. Thank you so much. I'm Mark Malkoff. We'll see you soon.